Oh, sorry, Peter.
Hi, Peter.
What is a gas line right there? Where are they coming? They can be. I'm not stopping.
So this was
This is very well.
I glanced at it.
I'm gonna bring this up. Did you want to read it? This is the document. Sorry, it's on my phone.
Oh, I don't have time to read the whole
Okay.
thing.
No, just the
Just
part here.
I'm really bad at
No, this is part of
Oh, I got your pen. You can have it back. I got it.
I'm sure we're going to be responsible for construction of
No.
Fine.
Okay. Oh, sorry. It's going to be doing.
What committee we doing?
Oh, also construct and seller's other DRI projects under terms 2 of the right?
See, the purchase and we also construct. Yes, yes. They may work in conjunction. We just talked about that.
Okay. All right.
They may let.
I'm going to
prime-
question that, and you can talk about it then. I just
They may let prime be the prime and control the other end. Although they will only do that whatever we say goes.
Which is fine.
What they would do.
I like it.
They won't decide. That's mad. He's well versed.
Should we read the agenda first?
Okay, we'll go ahead and start our finance committee meeting. Start with a roll call.
Counselor Kelly?
Here.
Counselor Moore?
Here.
Mayor Reed?
Present.
Counselor Armstrong? Counselor Gibbs?
Here.
Counselor Ensel?
Here.
Counselor McFarland?
Here.
This is the point in the meeting where we invite members of the public to come speak about the items on the agenda today. Seeing no one, we'll move into part number 2 of our meeting, which is reports from our department representatives and discussion with counselors. We've got a pretty hefty agenda today, as you can see, so we'll try to move through it quickly. The first item, if you're ready, Mr. Marks, is to talk to us about the credit card and automated clearinghouse or ACH updates.
We had a meeting this week with JetPay, who's now owned by NCR. They're merging, so they're in a JetPay's getting into a much bigger platform for services. Since NCR, as you all have heard that name for years and years, they do a lot of different business functions. They're not on the payment processing end, so they bought JetPay in order to get on the payment processing end. They're more on the billing end of things instead of the payment processing end. So we could be looking forward to doing something with NCR functions for our utility billing and possibly our property tax billing in the future. Property tax billings are being done outside at this point, but utility billings are not. They're being done in-house, and there could be a potential for us to farm that out and save a lot of money in the process. So we're going to have to take a look at that. But the purpose of the meeting was also to talk about the JetPay credit card rates that the mayor has been pressing me for about a year and a half now to look at a different rate instead of the $4.95 per $400, which actually is a 1.24% discount rate. They're proposing one instead of 2.25% discount rate for transactions $45 and higher. For $44 transactions and lower, there's going to be a $1 fee. So if someone wants to use a credit card for a $3 parking permit, for example, it only costs an extra $1 to do it instead of $4.95.
That's awesome. I remember when I went to pay my parking ticket, it was $15, and I was like, I'll pay by credit card, and they're like, oh, that's another $4.95.
Yeah, and if you did it on the police department website through Complex, it'd be $10 for a convenience fee. So the city's $4.95 for every $400 was a rate that was designed for an average utility bill, let's say of $250, so it'd be about a 2.5% rate. But for larger charges, it actually works out to be a much lower discount rate, 1.2375, I think is the exact calculation. However, a lot of people complain that, you know, the $4.95 is too expensive for the small charges. So this way, we reduce it to 2.25, which is even lower than the county's rate, and $1 for everything that's $44 and less. And the anticipation by JetPay, they haven't sent me the analysis yet, they're going to send this. He had a nice presentation the other day that Eileen and I sat through, and we took a look at things, whether he's going to make sure that he has the presentation corrected for any inaccuracies and send it to us. Potential savings for charges, he estimated to be $13,345 that our customers would not have to pay by switching from $4.95 to 2.25%. Of course, that's money out of JetPay's pocket, but they feel that the credit card usage will go up because of the lower fees. So it's going to be a decision to be made about changing that with our credit card merchant. Presently, we have 2.15% as the fee for credit card discounting with the recreation transactions, complex transactions, plus a 25-cent per item charge. Now that in a $25,000 a month of charges equates to about 2.5%. 25 cents per item adds a lot on. We go for 2.15 to 2.5 just because the lower charges. If there's a $10 charge, 25-cent pop per item is just a big fee on top of the 2.5% or 2.15%. So anyway, the point would be to get all of our charges to the same rate, 2.25%. Across the board, and to get more business going, even include our city clerk, because right now we're charged $1.95 for a $10 item, and so that is costing a lot. A $10 marriage license copy, I guess, is $1.95 charge on top of it with using your credit card. So we can even get the other departments, building inspector included, if they want to take credit cards in this whole process. So we'll be looking to finalize the report with JetPay and determine the 2.25% is going to make as much a difference as he has indicated, and we would have to decide if we're going to make that change. I know the mayor's going to be all over it. He wants it. It's been bugging me for a year.
Richard, do we don't keep any of that?
No. That's a convenience fee that's turned over. Now, here's the next part of the discussion. If the city wants to absorb the discount, now I'm going to check and make sure we stay well we would get an even lower rate, and we would be eating the discount.
Mute yours.
So that's something we discussed. Well, I'm going to get
Okay.
for our relative level of business right now, which is $3.5 million worth of credit card and e-check fees, or excuse me, payments per year. And believe it or not, it's about a 50-50 ratio between credit cards and e-checks. We think a lot of the credit cards are being used by higher paying customers, higher bill paying customers, because they're getting that 2% cash back of what's in your wallet. And so they're getting the benefit of that by getting cash back, even though the $4.95 is a 1.24% fee. They're getting 2% back, so they're making a net spread.
So if we ate that, and it's about half of $3 million is in credit card transactions, and they pay about a 2% average rate, the city be eating somewhere around $30,000 of fees, and maybe higher, because if they didn't have to pay any fee, then probably even more people use credit cards. So
Probably, yeah. But the discount rate would go down. We
yeah,
would probably get
but
a
we'd be
content-
paying it still.
Yeah.
We'd be paying it, but it'd be probably under 2%.
Right.
But it's a matter of whether we want to eat that cost just to get the convenience of more credit card transactions. The average I'm seeing per day when I bring the file in and post it is about $10,000 a day. Today's was 14,000, and that's e-checks and credit cards.
I
The
think
volume
we
is
were
pretty big.
I think we were also hoping that once we have the ACH or the ability to pay right out of your checking account right online, and that's the other thing he's working on, then hopefully all these other transactions will go down and more people just use the free
Debit.
alternative right online.
And another big piece of this, I'm glad you brought that up, is that, we paid Tyler Technologies $19,500 for a gateway, which is, adding our credit card merchant to their array of gateways that they allow. They have 16 of them, and they said that they would give us one for free 5 years ago, and then they reneged on that promise, and they said that they would do it for like 20 grand, so $19,500, which JetPay is paying half of, but we didn't pay the second half because the gateway they did for us almost a year ago, which we had to wait to get deployed in our 11.2 version of Munis, which just got deployed in August, still doesn't work. So we're trying to get that to work, and once that gateway works, we'll be able to have credit cards right online for property taxes and utilities. We don't have that right now, we have it just for utilities, because there's no control in there over what a person could pay for their property taxes. They have to pay at least a full installment or the full bill, because that's what our code says. And we couldn't let them just go in there and make a payment ad hoc. So that control will be in there, plus the ability to set up a direct debit to your checking account. That'll happen automatically every month. Get an emailed bill or get a bill mailed to you, and on that due date, you get a direct debit out of your checking account. There's no cost to that because the bank will cover those fees for us.
Great work.
So, yeah, but it's taken a long time. The gateway is the big problem with this. So anyway, we'll get you the final report on the 2.25% cost differential, and the savings and all that, and it'll be up to the council whether to change. It's great that JetPay's gotten to a bigger platform now, because I think there's going to be a lot of additional opportunities for the city there with NCR's processes. We're going to look at lockbox with them, which we already do, but our lockbox is pretty expensive. We do a lot of lockbox processing, probably about 30,000 payments a year coming through lockbox. But they're costing us 78 cents, 80 cents a piece when they should be about 50. So we might be able to get that to go through NCR. So other things like that are going to be available.
I think the opportunities for standardization are exciting too, in that every department could be using the same platform.
Right. Now, what the representative, Joe Lennon from JetPay, is going to do, he's going to reach out to Easy Facility and see if they can develop a gateway together. Because right now, our Easy Facility credit card charges go through Authorize.net, FirstNet of Omaha, and then to JetPay. They have to go through 3 processes. And we lose some sometimes in the middle. One system is down, they get lost and we don't get the money for them. Not a lot of money, a couple $100 here and there, but we lose money. And we're also paying additional fees for all those layers of processing.
Right.
So JetPay's going to try and get together with them directly. They already work with the BAS system that Sylvia uses in the city clerk's office, because that's an Albany system, and they have a large working relationship with Albany through that BAS system already. So we're looking to explore more things in that area.
Okay.
Great, thank you, Richard.
Richard, thank you. While we're at it, you're standing up, Richard, would you please update us on overtime, or is that something we need to hold off on?
We got sets of reports. Can I move this? Yes, I can. Mind if I move that over there?
No.
Okay. This is the report for December 2018. It's tentative at this point. We still have some adjustments, year-end closing entries and so forth to go in. And here's the one for 19. Now attached to this, I brought these all up to date. Took about 2 days to do this. Bring them up to date. We have the overtime in here, comparing January of this year to January of last year and the year before. And I think that's what Councilor Kelly was asking about doing at this point. So when you look at 2019 numbers, can everybody see that, or do I need to blow it up a little higher?
Oh, that's good.
No, that's good.
Okay. So the actual overtime, of course, month and year-to-date are the same, 45,000 for the general fund, compared to 49,000 last year, and compared to 26,000 in 2017. And you'll see the big hitters once again in here are the fire department and the police department. Although it looks like
police is actually under.
That's right, they've gone down.
well, police in 17 and fire in 17 were lower than they were in 18 and in 19. Actually, they've gone down. The police, you're right, has gone down 4,000 from last year. A little bit of this is some timing. I think that the reversal that came forward from the end of December to split the payroll hours between the years has had one more day effect in this year than it did last year. So there's going to be a slight difference with that, and I think that could be the difference between total dollars, except for the fact when you see a big change like this.
Richard, did we ever get to the bottom of the accounting function with the fire department with holiday and overtime?
We know that the holiday hours have been counted as overtime, and I've got to get back with Julie, because I've been asked her about it in a week, if those hours were actually paid incorrectly. Because if they come in as an overtime hour instead of a holiday hour, it's going to invoke a time and a half rate. So I think we've overpaid people. I think there's a mistake there. It's because the in-time hours we were importing were coded incorrectly. And it's something I think the chief has to look at with Kathy Levine versus any support you can get from Chief Ritter through your IT section. Or I don't know if we're going to have to get a hold of Casey Karofsky, who was moved to the county when she was in the middle of implementing that system for the police, the fire department.
In time is the timekeeping system that the police department uses, correct?
And the fire uses it now too.
The fire uses it also.
And that's
Okay.
part of the discussion we were going to have about seeing if we can migrate that to all the other departments.
Now with
So-
the overtime for fire, keep in mind that they're trending about the same as the same time last year, higher than 2 years ago. But their staffing level's lower right now too. And they
Right.
also had one person on disability who wasn't present at all. So they're probably staffing at about 90% of what they were. So you would expect overtime to go up. Once we net the staffing change with the overtime, we'll have to see. But it probably is not as big a problem as it initially appears because of that.
I asked the mayor to do this for the, or I'm sorry, I asked the Chamberlain to do this for the council so that we can compare year over year. It's one thing to have the
Yeah.
numbers and say, oh gee, this looks pretty high for this year, but unless you compare the previous years, it doesn't make as much sense, so.
Yeah.
Plus, you also have to look into the fact that salaries are increased. So with the increase in salary, when you go pay
Absolutely.
overtime too, that
That's
compounds.
That's definitely a factor.
That's definitely a factor too.
That's a really good point, because even though we gave a retro for 2017 and 2018 salaries, it's probably not incorporated in these numbers, but
Right.
certainly is in the 2019 numbers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now this is December 31st, 2018 compared to the same period in 17 and 16, where we had $900,000 general fund overtime versus 613 versus 564. So it is growing. And of course, the principal growth there is mostly the fire department and also the police department. Now, once again, in these fire numbers, there could be that error that's impacting for paying for fire holiday instead of for overtime.
I guess I have a question too regarding overtime with the settlement with the fire department. With those figures, were they factored, any of that overtime factored in that?
Right, that's what I'm saying. I bet you 2016, 2017, and 2018 don't reflect those numbers, because we gave retro checks out,
Right.
but that wouldn't have adjusted your 2017.
But those
payroll
that
if you would've-
that retro pay also, the
Yes.
individual's overtime was calculated into that retro pay as well.
Yeah, yeah.
The retro pay is calculated based on the type of pay
Okay.
that we have to do the retroactive pay on, and so the overtime would have been.
But then, those figures aren't calculated into here either.
In other words, your 2016 figures, are they the same figures you would have reported last year for 2016 and the year before for 2016?
Oh, yeah, they haven't changed because of retroactive pay. The retroactive pay is all paid current, it was all done at the end of 2018.
Right.
But technically, these numbers would have been higher if they were,
Right, if you went back and
Right.
revised everything. That's
exactly.
Oh, and that may also explain why 2018's numbers are higher,
Right.
correct?
That's
Yeah,
right.
when we go back up and look at the regular payroll numbers, this is the previous screen. When you get these reports, I'll forward them on to you if the mayor says go ahead and do that.
Bless you.
When you look at the actual payroll numbers, now let me see if I can make sure we can identify them here. Okay. So fire is 2,616,130. You can see it's up quite a bit from 2017. Pretty consistent between 16 and 17. And I think that what we're seeing in 16 and 17, like the mayor said, is fewer, I think we had fewer people during that time period. But the majority of this increase is because of the retro pay. That's being accounted for mostly in the regular pay section.
And
about
that
other
was roughly
departments?
$600,000, correct?
Well,
I don't know if that was
no, I
overtime.
think it was more like 435,000 of actual pay, and then the other pieces are gonna be what happens with retirement and FICA
Okay.
and workers' comp and so forth.
Okay.
But Richard, the calculations, for example, as part of the retroactive, you did not go back and say, okay, well, this is how much would have been overtime on that, and applied it to these numbers in 2016
No,
or 2000.
we would've
It's all
gone back
been
and
applied
calculated. It's
with
all been applied in
2018.
2018, it's all
Okay.
classified as retroactive
Okay,
pay.
for 18, and it's only applied at
Yes.
18, it doesn't.
That's right.
So if you actually applied that evenly across the years, 16 and 17 would be higher and 18 would be lower.
That's right.
So help me out here, Richard. If I remember that last slide, it was up to, was period ended January 31st. So not today, but in my overtime sheet today, I have up to, today's date, the 22nd, and the year-to-date actual I have for the fire department on here is 89,777, and there we have 28,036. So
That's correct.
so is there a $60,000 overtime for just the 22 days in February?
I'd have to look back to last week and the week before.
I got it right here.
Some of the difference also is what's included in here also includes shift differential, which amounts to about $700 a week.
That makes sense.
So that's not a huge difference versus the numbers that you see on the screen. Because when I count the numbers here, I'm counting overtime and shift differential as well as that type of a pay type. Overtime, standby, and shift differentials are all going in there. And so the only difference for the fire department, like I said, would be, it's a $500 a year shift differential for all of them. They all get it
What about other
automatically.
departments? Remember, we're
So
we're focusing
it
on
works
all
out
of
to be
them.
about
Can we look at others
$700 a
right now?
week.
So that they don't feel like they're being built.
Do we know why?
But I'd have to look and see if, they had additional overtime, or if it's holiday time being converted to overtime, or what has caused the difference between 89 and the 28.
Do we know what the change in variance of the $3,000 is with water pollution control? Do we know what that? No, John isn't here.
I do know.
What are you talking about?
The variance for water pollution control is $3,000 more than the variance from the same time last year.
They're over budget, that's what that
What are
says.
you looking at, Councilor?
On here,
Okay,
what, $3,000 variance here?
that's just that they're $3,000.
No, I know that, but I'm wondering if we know what it's the cause of it, or?
No. I was working on trying to get additional information together for this meeting about not what individual's name is spending the overtime, but what titles are. I still intend to get you that. Here's the overtime by title, whether it's fire captain or pollution control plant operator or whatever. So I can send you that so you can see where the overtime dollars are going by title. And then you can ask the department heads to say, how are you spending the time? Tell me why. Why is it being spent that way?
And I guess DPW, I presume, is all weather related
You can really see the snow
And-
ice driving now.
and water breaks.
Yeah, yeah, and snow and ice, of course, plowing is huge.
Yeah, it makes sense.
At this time of year, and you'll
Right.
see that DPW will be over on their overtime for the first 4 months of the year, and
And
all of
then
a
it goes
sudden
down.
they'll start to ratchet back the other way because they get less and less overtime during the summer months, except for events and, water breaks and those kind of things.
The other thing you're gonna look at overtime is that we've had really poor timing due to falling out on holidays. So we're also penalized, not only weekend and holidays, as the two primary storms that we've had that actually jack our overtime up.
The timing is terrible when it hits the
Timing is
weekend,
terrible.
especially Sunday.
Yes.
I'd like to thank
And
you,
it's
Chief
a
Ritter, for being
holiday,
under
too.
budget.
It's all hands on the hand.
Monday holiday is just terrible.
Yeah.
At least I want to work in the snow. How do I get some of that $352 for overtime for the common council?
You have to join the union. So we'll get Jason Keeble in touch with you.
I think we should form.
All right, so
Richard, would you please send us all electronic copies of this,
Sure.
please, so we can study it individually? Hopefully
Yep.
it'll help us monitor overtime as we go along. And I would also, Counselor Ensel's question about the water pollution control plant is a good question. It's one we should be asking about every department so that we know what they're doing. And I believe going forward, we should ask every department at each of our committee meetings, how you doing on overtime and how do you explain this, the overtime you spent year to date, so.
So I intend to send you that overtime usage by title, by department, so that you can ask to have the detail of how it's being spent. Didn't get to it today, we had a couple of additional meetings that,
What did we have for our reserve fund with over, was it 200 or?
We put
300.
rough,
funny you should ask that question. Let's just go down there and take a look.
What was the question? I'm sorry.
In the budget, we
We
had
put
kind
some
of a
money in
reserve
contingency
of
for-
overtime, contingency money for overtime.
seems like it's 106,000.
Let's see, no, it's.
No, I thought it was about 200.
Big number. 370,000
370,
is the, let's see if I can bring this down. Yeah, contingency was affected by that, so 370, 134 is the general fund piece. Whoops. Yeah, I gotta go to the next page. 763,000 is rec complex, 120 is parking, 7,834 is water, and 17,681 is sewer. And library is 658. So it's close to 400,000 bucks.
Mike, I guess, Mike, would some of this overtime that's being charged to WPCP, would that be based on any of the water breaks or anything?
No,
Okay,
no, you'd have to ask John
okay,
about what's going on.
because I know that part of their,
Yeah, the plant operations and what's
The
in
presentation we gave you last week, very clearly, it shows the code, we code all our stuff.
mhm.
So it ends up down in the finance department coded for our, it always comes out of our budget line.
Our line item.
Rich, could you put on that end of year tentative chart again?
Okay, this is January's. And there's December's. You see that okay, everybody?
Mhm.
Of course, the second page of this is compared to last year, that's that one.
So the general fund expenditures were up a little bit than budget, up maybe 4% higher than budget, and revenue's up about 1 or 2% higher than budget for the general fund?
Yes. Now, in the general fund, I have to reduce the expenditures by the amount of the White Group, the Saratoga Group, and the Crane Associates that are still in the CD numbers. I gotta take
Right.
those out and put those into a receivable. We still have a few other things to do in the month of January. The numbers that you see on the January slides aren't final because I don't have the prepaid amount of retirement brought forward yet into January as an expense. Because when we pay the retirement bill in December, 9/12 counts towards the current year and 3/12 counts towards the next year because of the state calendar ending in March. And then we also didn't make our transfers to the other departments until February for both January and February, so that has to be adjusted back in too. So there's about $500,000 in the general fund expenditures that need to be increased when you look at this comparison over here. These numbers are going to look very favorable, only $1.4 million in spending versus last year where it was $2.4 million. But the retirement's $500,000 across the board and also the transfers. So anyway, there's still some numbers to be put together in January, but in looking at December's, we're gonna have a surplus in the general fund once I reverse those numbers from the spending that's gone on in CD. And we also have to book some revenue still that's gonna charge the water, sewer, and MLD for the data processing charges. We're in the process of doing that as well.
But didn't you say you're also going to do some transfers out of expenditures for general fund to?
That's in January. That's this year instead of last year.
Good, thanks.
Mayor,
send you
we're
those
way over
reports.
schedule here.
Yeah.
Do you mind if we continue?
Sure, please.
Would you prefer we wrap it up?
We do have an executive session that we'll time in at some point.
Okay, if it's okay, let's move item number 3 under 2 to next month, and then also number 5, Richard's already pretty much shared our January budget results.
Yes.
The last thing I'd like to do is just have a very, very brief discussion about OpenGov versus other reporting systems, and then have a view of some dashboards that Rochelle sent us.
You want to put those up?
If you don't mind, please. Rochelle sent us some sample dashboards from the OpenGov program today, and they are quite impressive. I just wanted to show those to you.
Which one would you like to look at?
Let's look at I believe the second one shows, here's the first one, Richard, I'm sorry. That one right there I thought was pretty good for the council perspective. It takes each of your departments. Now this is all fictitious data. This is not Plattsburgh, but it gives you an idea of the kinds of things you would have at your fingertips with a program like OpenGov, and something that Councilor Armstrong has been a big proponent of for a couple of years now at least. And it just shows you that the wealth of data and charts you can pretty much pull from your fingertips. It would really help the finance department, I believe, in that we wouldn't have to ask for information anymore. It would be updated as often as Munis updates it, and that would be very, very helpful to us all.
What is the cost of?
Some of the questions we asked in today's meeting could be answered from a dashboard like this. So I'm excited about it, optimistic that it's going to help us in many ways. I guess the downside of it is it's going to cost the OpenGov version of this, and there are others also, but this one is $53,000 for the first year. So we'd have to ask ourselves, are we getting $53,000 worth of value from this? And then it would be $43,000 for each subsequent year for up to 7 years. And the mayor's asked that we perhaps make an agreement with whoever for a 1-year evaluation to make sure that it's working for us the way we'd like. So something to take into consideration, certainly.
I guess my question is, as far as the application of it, the information is based upon the templates here. I think it's very, very, very helpful. I guess my question is there, besides the council, who else, and Richard certainly, and maybe would it be just the department heads that would be able to access this, and who would find it beneficial?
Yep.
Would the usefulness of it?
This is public information that's available, say, on the state controller's website. Potentially, it could be open to anyone. Anyone could go to our website and pull down one of these charts or graphs and survey it themselves. And I see absolutely no harm in that.
No, I think that's wonderful. And I guess my other question is, would the 53,000 and then the 43,000 a year annually, after that, we could potentially save that money by having this information in front of us on a daily basis?
Yeah.
Remember when we talked to OpenGov, I think the first group we talked to, or we got my terms mixed up, but they felt that we could probably have a 2% increase in efficiency because of this. I don't think Richard and I necessarily think it could be that high, but if it were 1% or so, and then you add the democratic feature of having more people, more eyes on this, then that's certainly a value too, that seems like could be a good investment. Of course, it turns out to be no efficiency improvement at all, then it's probably going to be a bad investment.
Oh, and I must remind everyone that we do have a demonstration of this on March the 5th, I believe at 5 o'clock, right, Rochelle? 5 o'clock? Okay. So, I believe that's going to be an open meeting, so all of us can attend, and I would encourage you to. I plan to be there.
There's a piece of this that I think is gonna give us some efficiency
What time was that, Mike?
It's
5?
called the workforce planning module, where we're gonna import, instead of, let's say, finally developing and using the workforce management piece of Munis, which we've never done since 2000. It's one of those things, you buy an enterprise system and you get about 60–70% of the utilization out of it. You don't go the extra mile to actually make it all work. They say that the startup of theirs is gonna be much easier than initiating ours. So, once we deploy all of our personnel and payroll information, the workforce planning as far as budgeting is gonna be much simpler and much more efficient. The only thing we have to do is make sure we control it so the department heads, can see it
Right.
and agree with it, but not put changes in that, eventually get into the budget you wouldn't know about.
Right.
That's the only control we have to have.
Okay.
So
This is all.
that seems like that's going to be an advantage.
This is all exciting news, and one of the better finance committee meetings I can recall in a long time, in that we're discussing some exciting possibilities for the future. So, thank you.
Finance just isn't that exciting.
It's exciting when it's good, I think.
The numbers are good. Sales engineering has done a great job. When the numbers are bad, accounting has screwed it up again. That's my recollection.
That's how it works.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Marks, really appreciate it. So we'll move on to item number 3 now, agenda items brought forth from our departments to be approved by committee and recommended to council. The first one is a resolution authorizing settlement of property assessment case filed by Charles Rossett.
We waive the reading.
Yeah, Mike, I would
I
like.
believe we can bypass the reading on this. Has everyone had a chance to read it? Okay.
That one?
Then let's move on to item number 2,
I need to blow it up.
which is,
Can we waive the reading on all of them, Mike?
as far
I
as I'm
think we should
concerned,
probably, we'll need an executive session before item number 4, so how about we waive the reading on items 1 through 3, and then go into brief executive session, does that work?
Yes, that's fine.
And the first couple of items there, we've either discussed it in the past or included the documentation for you to review on them as well.
Yes, yes, we have. So should I read items 3, 4, and 5? Or, actually, they're misnumbered. It would be 4, 5, and 6.
Well, it's item 4 under item 2, right? And then
Yeah,
this
it's
is
item
item
2, and
3,
then you
4, and
have-
5. So like subsection.
Oh,
yeah.
okay. Oh, okay. Oh, I see what you're saying. All right.
So you've got item 1 on the tax case, item 2's on our planner's report on parking. Item 3 is on the letter of intent,
Yes?
and item 5 is one of the items that you've moved with regard to the facade project. So I think item 4 is the only thing we would probably need to not waive reading and then go into a brief executive session.
I do have a question on
Okay.
item 3. So do you want to wait until we get back from executive session, or do you want to do that now?
Why don't you do that now?
Well, so I read over the letter of intent, and I was wondering, is there going to be, who's going to be in charge of deciding who's going to construct the project? So who's going to get the construction project, the contract to do? Who will make that decision?
It'll be an open bidding process per the terms of the grant and just general guidelines that the city follows for any major construction project.
Will there be a PLA, or is this all just going to be open to bidding and?
It'll be an open bidding process, yeah.
Okay, so there'll be possible that it could go to a PLA.
What do you mean by PLA?
Oh, what does that stand for?
Project labor agreement.
Project labor agreement.
There it is.
A voice from afar.
Yes. Are you going to answer that?
Gail's got some comments.
Gail, go ahead.
Hi, Gail Henderson, Whiteberg. Just to clarify, in the letter of intent, we talk about construction of the project by prime companies as well as the project. We refer to the.
You can't play the piano while I'm on the meeting.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, we can't play the piano.
Sorry.
So, and we also refer to the other DRI projects that will be impacting and going, that will be happening roughly at the same time as the Durkee Street project. Just so it's clear, the Durkee Street development will be done by prime companies, which that will not be, I don't know how they'll be doing that process. That'll be something separate, but the project, the other DRI streetscape projects, that I believe does have to go through an open bidding process. So that part would go through that process.
But the Durkee Street project, you can't be sure.
That's a privately funded project, so I
Okay,
don't.
that was my question.
Right.
That's what I wanted to know.
They're working directly with ESD, Empire State Development on the DRI funding, but I believe at this point that they will be doing their bidding separate from the Durkee Street project. But
Okay.
that still has to be worked out.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know.
So if you'd entertain a motion to waive the reading and to move items 1 through 3 and 5 to the agenda, and then we can move or go to an executive session and complete with number 4, or however you want to do that.
Are you making that motion?
I can, yeah.
Mayor, I was going to make one requested amendment to number 3. It says, letter of intent with Prime Plattsburgh Hotel LLC. Can we change Prime Plattsburgh Hotel to simply Prime Companies LLC?
No.
That's the way the LOI is written now.
Okay.
Companies.
So we need a second on this motion and as amended. Okay. And then would you like to vote to move all these to the agenda, then move to the executive session and complete the last item?
Yes. The mayor's made a motion that we move all of these items to tonight's agenda,
Except for item 4.
except for item 4. And I second that.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Moore?
Yes.
Mayor Reed?
Yes. That said, would you mind if we then move to an executive session? The subject would be pending litigation involving Messina versus New York Municipal Power Association. Moved by Councilor Ansel, second by Councilor Moore. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Rochelle, do you want me to,
Please call me.
Rochelle, you want me to call you?
She's already on the phone.
We can just keep this
That's-
on.
We got your phone right here, Michelle.
Just
Or
Is that your
Michelle.
phone, Beth? It's Beth's phone.
Oh, Beth, is it okay if we take your phone?
Sure. Please don't answer any of my calls to my voice.
Oh, thank you.
Would you like for us to pay the bill for you? Thank you.
Sure.
But she still can't figure out.
So John.
We could hear her.
You can hear, good, you guys see in the back, when Michelle, because she's not going to Skype, she's only watching Skype, but she's talking through the phone.
No, I couldn't hear.
You good?
Did you? You?
Joe, could you hear Michelle when she answers on the phone? No. Okay.
I heard her say a couple of things.
No, but you know, it's, I've been a grandkid.
For the most part, I've been watching at home, so I'm really calm down.
Yeah,
But that doesn't work again.
So.
I don't know
He
your
said we could all hear her, but you guys can't hear back here.
Why did they lock it?
You were told it don't matter anyway, so.
Somebody asked about the neighbor, MLB's got.
It's not ours, so we've been on two separate
Properly. And then shortly after that, I saw P.M. Leary's truck there.
Those don't work, I don't know if I would troubleshoot enough where she, like, if it was.
Nobody who lives in the back.
Where I was at is what.
So they said something about.
I was gonna do that, but
Those are my favorite
like when you double the expressor and something bad to me, it's like a little.
Oh yeah, that drives me crazy. Especially like if you're at a class or something and they're all like
Distracting.
yeah. Or even just you're trying to interview and
I looked for her number. But I did have her email, and I emailed her and said, hey, I just saw that. And I didn't say no comment, so I didn't have time to talk to her. You told, you saying that I had no comment, it seemed like.
Okay. Well, Jeremy, comes down around that lane. So, because he was off this one day, so
Just one of those administrators.
I gave him, he knows who the news called, he gave him his cell phone. I gave him his cell phone. And he calls me back and says, well, they don't have much story on either of that lane. I'm not gonna be there. So I go down there and answer that question. So I went down there. Well, this is not really what I want you to do down here for. I want to know,
Technically, I'd be their best friend, because those are my
Down all the way, because
Down all the way over on
Have it at.
It did?
Yeah.
And then I was talking.
We'll find one account. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I came in at 3 o'clock for water leak.
Oh, yeah, I know.
Yeah, he called one day. He said, oh, yeah, I know.
Monday we got
Sunday, he's gonna be working long. People are getting tired. Monday was, if you get some on the tape, she's something else. Or,
Yeah, these done. So did you take the stack, the other thing is done?
Took the stack, yeah.
I was like, he was one.
I don't know, no judgment.
I got every quarter.
Problem is, he hits.
I had to chase him down and try to pull a piece of belly from
No, even rapid. But when she did it, she was within 3 months.
Joe, I'll get that in.
No problem.
Stacy's got one freaking day.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I emailed her right away. I'm like, that is not what I said. She wrote me back and said, you guys said that. Yeah, I watched it. You said it. She said, I thought I said you weren't available for comment. I said, no, you said I had to. Connie, how are you? Good. I put a letter inside whether to wear this. We don't count that she's the outcome true. If you're gonna. Why? Why would we do that?
Oh, my brother, thanks.
What are you gonna do with that?
Is that Tinder out? Did Felix ever go? Oh, no, this is my work phone, that's probably one of those folks. I didn't give that out to everybody, just for.
Thank you, Greg.
But Beth, thanks for ordering the pizza for all of us.
It's on the mayor, the mayor's phone.
We're returning from executive session. We were discussing a matter of litigation with our local power authority, NIMPA versus Messina. No action was taken during executive session.
We'll continue with the Finance Committee meeting then, and following that executive session, I'd like to move that we move item number 4 on tonight's agenda to the regular agenda.
Second that.
Thank you.
Council Moore,
Yes.
Council Kelly,
Yes.
Mayor Reed.
Yes.
Okay, so all the items now have been moved to the agenda for tonight's meeting. Is there any old business? Any new business? Okay, not seeing any new business. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Roll
Council Kelly,
call. Yes?
Council Moore,
Yes.
Mayor Reed.
Yes.
Meeting's adjourned.
We'll begin the work session. We have a couple of minutes in the work session before we begin. I think you've already had a chance to discuss many of the items we'll be considering during the actual session. Is there anything else? Any
I
other
just,
stuff you'd like
can
to
I,
add?
can I just put one thing out there real quick? Item 7C. I know that we're talking about a trial implementation. I would feel comfortable if we had some sort of time limit on it, that we could definitely, if we wanted to move it, say, we will implement the program for 3 months or 6 months and then examine it or re-examine it at that point, whether to just to put some sort of, so that it's, I guess we can have some data available and then at that time examine.
You can certainly do that, although I would caution the council against committing to anything past 1 month, because, you know, we put a decent amount of thought into this, but in practice it may not work as we might expect it to, and if that's the case, then we may want to make changes or discontinue the trial sooner than 3 months.
Okay.
We certainly
I mean,
wouldn't make any changes or until.
what if we
at
did
least
like
the
a
next
6
council.
month, a 6 week trial period or something? Would that be sufficient enough time? I understand where you're coming from, where you want to maybe make some changes, but I also, I guess, on the other end of it, make sure that within 3 months or within a reasonable period of time that we look at it and decide whether that's a permanent.
We could do up to 3 months, would probably.
Yeah,
Cause
I would feel comfortable with that.
If it did collapse in
Yeah.
3 weeks, we'd be able to back out.
I would feel comfortable with an up to 3 month.
The final provision of the resolution says that the on-street parking permit trial may be terminated by subsequent council resolution. That does not have a date or time limit on it. It could happen next week if.
Right.
But I don't.
But
know
I
if we
guess
wanna do
for me
that.
personally, I would just feel more comfortable having some sort of language in there that would give us some limitation. And
So
I would agree with Councilor Moore. I could support with up to a 3 month trial period.
So you're asking for an amendment to this to include?
To include
A
up to.
time period.
A time period.
I think you need to afford enough time for the PPAC to treat the issue fully, and, you know, given that they meet about once a month, it might be possible that they don't fully analyze this, and what we want to do here is have a trial system so we can get some data to understand how to transition that to some sort of permanent system, But on the other hand, I think Mr. Miller would be reluctant to kind of put a gun to the head of the PPAC saying, boy, you have to have this resolved within X number of months. I mean, I don't know how long it'll take. Hopefully it'll take 3 months, but could take 4, could take 2.
Well, what concerns me is that we have some constituencies in the city depending on this new parking permit system, or at least we think we do at this time. And to end that at 3 months would be pretty much pulling the rug out from under them. And
I mean, I think you just.
if we could couch that in terms of let's review it in 3 months.
I think it'll be reviewed at least every month.
Yeah.
But that's already explicit in the resolution.
Right, it is.
Yeah, in this trial, any data produced by it is going to be reviewed by the PPAC after a monthly meeting. This is going to be an ongoing conversation.
And remember, this, and this has been maybe misreported a little bit, is that we're imposing a paid parking regime. Actually, in some sense, we're not imposing any changes at all. If somebody wants to park for 2 hours, they park for 2 hours. If somebody wants to park for 3 hours and wants a parking ticket, they can do that too. The only thing this does is gives them one more option, that if they want to park for 3 hours and not risk a parking ticket, they could, at their discretion, purchase a permit. But the parking, there's no change in the parking lengths and the free parking and all that kind of stuff. So I think the community is upset about it, but they don't realize that all this does is gives them options. It doesn't impose any sort of obligations or penalties on them in any way.
I think that's a very important distinction that you just made.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you're gonna see the full extent of this until that Durkee Street lot gets eliminated. Then you're gonna really find out how many people are gonna take advantage of this. I really don't think you're gonna get some real meaningful information at this point, but.
Well, the hope is it's gonna be gone by then. This is a temporary proposal until we can get some system up in place.
And any system we put in place is going to have some bugs to iron out. We'd rather iron the bugs out in a trial system rather than roll something out and then find out in a month's time, geez, we should have done it slightly differently. That's really the purpose of this.
Yeah, the city doesn't have any experience beyond issuing handicap parking permits and administering a parking permit system, so this is more of a small, easily digestible step where we can iron out any inefficiencies to find out how best to make a larger, more expansive system work in the future.
I mean, I would just feel a little more comfortable if there was something in there with a time limit. Like I said, I would even, to address your concern, Mike, I would even say, up to 6 months, if that, I think if we have
that proposal anytime. If you feel after a certain time we have enough data, there can be an initiative made to, pull the stoppers or do whatever kind of review we want. So I think there's an open-endedness to the resolution, and we don't need any added language about time limits.
I participated in a brief discussion with Matt Miller and Ethan Vincent about this today, and we sort of concluded there may be resolutions to follow. We may find that certain parts of this work extremely well, certain parts don't work well, so we will want to tweak it as we go along. So that possibility always exists, to have resolutions to modify this one or change it in some way. So that can be done anytime to improve it.
With your indulgence, maybe we can have some more discussion on this item during the council meeting.
Sure.
We can begin the council meeting. Begin the council meeting tonight for the city of Plattsburgh with a pledge of allegiance, please. Pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mayor Reed?
Present.
Councilor Armstrong?
Here.
Councilor Kelly?
Here.
Councilor Gibbs?
Here.
Councilor Ensel?
Here.
Councilor McFarland?
Present.
Councilor Moore?
Here.
In the interest of expediency, I have no comments at this time.
Resolved that the minutes of the regular meeting of the Common Council held on February 14th, 2019 are approved and placed on file among the public records of the city clerk's office.
Moved by Councilor Ensel, second by Councilor Gibbs. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed.
Resolved that the payrolls of the various departments of the city of Plattsburgh for the week ending February 20th, 2019 in the amount of $97,830.06 are authorized and allowed, and the mayor and the city clerk are hereby empowered and directed to sign one straw of the city chamberlain for the payment thereof.
Boy, it's lucky it wasn't like 3 or 4 more words long. Moved by Councilor Kelly, second by Councilor Gibbs. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. You have your weekly reports in your package. Are there any additional reports, beginning with governance strategy and city operations? Councilor Armstrong?
No.
City infrastructure, Councilor Moore.
I just wanted to mention that Councilor Gibbs and myself toured Public Works, water plant, and wastewater facilities, and I want to thank everybody that brought us around. It was very informative. I didn't realize there was so many things in the city. Maybe Councilor Gibbs has something to say about the tour also.
Well, we got an up close and personal tour at the sewage treatment plant. I'm very grateful for the time that the managers took out to do that for us. I learned so much, so thank you very, very much.
And as you discussed, many of the things in the city aren't even in the city.
Yes, I didn't even know that.
Finance and budget, Councilor Kelly.
We had our monthly meeting just moments ago, and we had a pretty ambitious agenda today. A lot of exciting things going on in the finance department with credit card processing and ACH. So we're looking forward to this year and all the good things that are going to happen. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Public safety, Councilor Gibbs.
Well, we met earlier this week with the department chairs, our department heads, and talked about quite a few things. So I'm hoping that next week when we have our meeting, we can bring all those to light and have a hearty conversation.
Thank you. Public library, Councilor Ensel.
The library board has a meeting scheduled for this coming Tuesday evening, I believe, right, Ann? I have a conflict, so I don't know, Councilor Armstrong, if you are going to be in town or not, but I have a conflict at that time.
The meeting's at 4:30. I have a meeting at 5. I ought to be able to attend.
Okay, thank you. That's it.
Thank you. And MLD Board President McFarland.
No updates at this time.
Resolved, the reports as listed are hereby ordered received. Any written reports are placed on file among the public records of the city clerk's office. Moved by Councilor Ensel and second by Councilor Kelly. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. There's no correspondences or recommendations from boards at this time. Please continue.
Resolved that the bills audited by the common council for the week ending February 22nd, 2019 in the amount of $1,207,718.85 are authorized and allowed, and the mayor and the city clerk are hereby authorized and directed to sign warrants drawn on the city chamberlain for the payment thereof.
Moved by Councilor Gibbs and second by Councilor Moore. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. This is an opportunity now for any individuals to please come and address the council. This first public comment period is for items on the agenda only. There's a copy of the agenda just outside the door. We will have another public comment period at the end of the meeting. Anybody?
My name is Ryan Brienza, and I'm a resident of the city of Plattsburgh. And I was just wondering to ask the council what the status of lifting the moratorium was on cryptocurrency mining operations. The moratorium has been in effect for almost a year now, and a lot of laws that the council has passed have been implemented to, I guess, control cryptocurrency mining operations. And I was just kind of wondering what the status is of lifting it.
I understand that there's one issue of a noise ordinance that the council preferred to deal with before lifting the moratorium, and I think you've been doing your due diligence on that and have the issues that you're concerned about somewhat resolved now and are ready to move forward. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Do you know what the timing for that is?
As soon as a counselor wants to introduce it, it's ready to go, as far as the noise ordinance.
Okay.
Do you know when, or do you have an idea when you're going to do that? I just asked if he had an idea when he was going to introduce that.
I could do that tonight. We have to schedule a public hearing, if I'm correct, Mr. Mayor. So
We would have to hand it out and place it on everyone's desk. I don't know if that would, yeah, probably better to do it next week then. We haven't, just give a little bit notice so that Beth can make copies.
So that'd be next week, and then we have, what, a 1 week?
A 2 week period.
2 week period, and then vote after that.
Yep.
So we're looking at 3 weeks to a month.
My only question with the noise ordinance is, it's going to be a new citywide law. Cryptocurrency, with your law P7, you already have a decibel rating in there for mining operations. If you could lift the moratorium sooner than that, what my goal is to bring some opportunity to Plattsburgh that's still out there. There's been a lot of innovations and, well, actually news lately in blockchain, and a lot of big stuff happening, and there's still some opportunity that can be brought to Plattsburgh. With heat recapture, we're working on some projects and some other towns that could be implemented here. And the sooner that it gets lifted, the more opportunity we have to bring here. And going back to the noise ordinance, no operation is going to pop up in a week or two within the time it takes for that law to get passed. So if it gets lifted now, we can pursue some of our goals, and that noise ordinance comes later that will still affect, it'll be citywide, so it'll affect all the operations and everybody in the city.
Actually, I think you raise a pretty good point. From what I understand, once the noise ordinance is passed, it would apply to everybody regardless of the status of the moratorium. If you are comfortable that the proposed noise ordinance addresses some of your concerns, then the moratorium could be lifted in the meantime.
That's all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks.
Any other individuals like to please come and address the council? Please.
My name is George Gates. I live on Saley Avenue. I'm concerned about throwing open Plattsburgh's electric rates to more miners. I don't know about you guys, but I noticed a drastic increase in my electric rates. $75 up. And I do not have electric heat. We heat with wood, so you can see my concern. I have a friend who lives on Cumberland Avenue, and her rate went up double. I'm just concerned that if we just let any and everybody come and start these mining operations, Plattsburgh will not be known as a city with friendly electric rates any longer. And there's many a thing happening in this area that are driving people from the city, and I've been in this city for a long time. I wouldn't like to see that happen. And if there's anything that we could do to discourage more of it, I don't mind people making a living doing something like that. But if they cause an increase, I think they should be brought to bear the cost themselves and not me help them do their mining business. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. And for the interest of the public, we imposed a moratorium on, I think, something like April 18th of last year. That same day, we had petitioned to ask Albany, the Public Service Commission, to help us out with the rates. We don't have the ability to set rates. We have to apply for rates to be changed. What Albany did, the Public Service Commission did, was produced something called Rider A, which says that if ever the city has to go buy a more expensive electric power that affects your bottom line, and if that's caused by this industry, the cryptocurrency industry, they have to pay for all that expensive power. It's not put on our bills. Now, once in a while, we'll have such a cold winter that even based on the usage of we ratepayers will go over, and when that occurs, we'll have to pay our share, but we'll never have to pay the cryptocurrency share. They're on their own according to Rider A. Is that a correct interpretation?
That is correct, Mayor.
So once in a while, we still will have those expensive rates, but no longer will we ever be paying the rates because of that industry. But the other thing you said is this council really does recognize that cheap electricity is one of the big resources that the city of Plattsburgh offers, and we have to treat that as a scarce and valuable resource and partition it so it creates lots of jobs and attracts lots of residents. And I know that my entire council really agrees in that philosophy, and we view that very strategically. You may know that we're trying to annex some property to have some developable land to attract industry. The only way that works is if we still have some inexpensive power to sell them to. So this is something that's very important to us as well. Thank you for your comments. Any other individuals like to please come and address the council? Seeing none, let's continue, please.
Motion to remove item 7A from the table.
Moved by Councillor Kelly. Do we have a second? Second by Councillor McFarland. So motion to move
Move from the table, back on the table.
Still to vote to move it.
From the table, yep.
So all in favor of moving it back to the table for discussion?
Aye.
Excuse me.
Aye.
Okay, it's on the table for discussion.
Did you get Councilor Armstrong? We should probably do a roll call vote. I don't think we heard.
Yeah, probably safe to do a roll
Counselor
call.
Armstrong?
Yes?
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs?
Yes.
Counselor Ensel?
No.
Counselor McFarland?
Yes.
Counselor Moore?
Yes.
So at this point, the item is back on the table for discussion and a potential vote.
Well, I've heard Ryan, and I was actually gonna move to get this off the table anyways to have discussion, mostly to ask the same thing he had asked about the noise ordinance. I do know we have an MLD board meeting coming up, in which hopefully we can, I haven't seen the agenda for that yet, but hopefully we can have some more information on right away then, and perhaps then we can answer some of the public questions, especially regarding rates. So if you don't want to do it tonight, perhaps that would be a good time to do it.
When is your meeting, your MLD board meeting, you said?
Is it next week, Beth? Or is it
I don't think
Next
it-
meeting is May.
Yeah, it's in May, yeah.
Oh, so maybe we don't want to wait for that.
Probably don't.
Yeah. But in some instances, I haven't seen the finished version of the noise ordinance unless it's the same as the one I saw. So I would like to see a copy of that.
Well, something went out in our email. Dean, I think you were the one that sent it, right? And it addressed some of the concerns we had. I don't think we've had any other conversation about it. Councilor Moore, sounds like you're ready to present that to.
No, it basically incorporated our prior noise law.
Right.
It just added some decibel.
Some changes. Mhm.
Limits for commercial mostly.
Okay,
and
so
it
we're-
could be at somebody's house.
That's
so-
right. I mean, I'm saying, you know, three weeks to a month, I think we can make a decision based upon, you know, having the noise ordinance, having it introduced, having the public meeting, public hearing, and then voting on it at that point. I think it just makes sense to have everything in place before it's lifted.
This has been on our agenda for how many weeks now?
Probably 4.
4. I don't really like it when things get tabled and stay there forever, so I like for us to act. Either we vote this up or we vote it down.
Well, I think our largest concerns from everybody are the electric rates. It sounds like that is addressed. That's in place.
Yeah.
And so our residents are secure. And anybody who is going to increase the rates because of their crypto mine, that's where Rider A comes in, yes?
Yep.
So we have that in place. We have a noise ordinance that we're going to introduce in its entirety next week. But this is a point of clarification, any new crypto mine that comes in, and if they happen to come in before this is passed, the minute it is passed, they would have to come into compliance with any existing law. Isn't that correct? Any new or existing law?
You've already passed your cryptocurrency law. That code has already been adjusted, so they're coming in under that. if you subsequently pass a noise ordinance, they'll also come in under that because that applies to any entity within the city. So I think you've got both those covered.
I do too. And I think everybody is nervous about lifting this because of the impact on our communities. But it's also my understanding that we really can't keep them out indefinitely. Would that be correct?
We actually surmise that there's not going to be, given the low price of cryptocurrencies, we don't have that same level of interest as we did 18 months or 2 years ago. The Bill and I were calculating the break-even price for Bitcoin, for instance, the largest operator, somewhere around 5.8 cents per kilowatt hour. That's pretty close to the commercial rate right now. And then you add in any rider A, any overages that are imposed on that industry, becomes quite unprofitable right now to operate cryptocurrency. Even here, which has some of the lower rates in the country. As a matter of fact, we've seen operators curtailing their operation here of late. Now there is especially one very large operator that has very cheap power at the industrial rate of around 2.7 cents per kilowatt hour, and they've obviously got some leeway to continue, but none of this affects them anyway because they're first of all grandfathered and they're not eligible for the cryptocurrency regulations. They would be eligible for the noise regulations, and that's a concern and probably something they'd have to adjust to, but it's unrelated to the moratorium. So it's a pretty multivariate, multifaceted issue, certainly. A lot going on.
My biggest concern is how well that rider A is going to protect us. I guess I don't think it's gone into effect yet, so we're really not
it's
sure
in effect, yeah.
how well that's going to insulate everyone. Maybe Mr. Tracy could, I know he's explained it to me, but I still don't understand it fully how that's going to, is it going to protect us?
Have we had to buy power?
We had to buy in December, and I'm gonna pull this from my memory because I gave you the numbers the last meeting for what that was. We also had to buy in January. January we had to buy quite a bit more. For the customer, it's going to be the PPAC purchase power adjustment charge will be 0.007, and there's a couple of decimal points out beyond that. But it would actually be below 0.007 for the regular customers, which is in the ballpark of what they normally pay during the summer and spring and fall. For the cryptos, the two large ones, it will be closer to 4 cents a kilowatt hour for their PPAC. So there's quite a difference there.
Have they haven't been billed yet?
No, that bill won't go out to them till the 1st of April. Because it gets applied. The bill came in February, and the PPAC I calculated for the customers won't get applied until their March bills. And the cryptos are read at the end of the month, so their bill won't go out to the 1st of April. That's when they'll see it. And the one for December will be going out to them the 1st of March.
When does the moratorium expire on its own?
18 months.
Yeah,
From
that
March
in the
15th.
fall of this year, right?
Yep. 18 months from March 15th of 2018.
I think we said September.
So let me just clarify that the crypto mining industry doesn't have any impact on our normal ratepayers.
Would that be correct, Mr. Tracy?
Yes.
That's the question.
Did you get the answer, Rochelle?
Yes, he
Mr.
said
Tracy
you're
said-
correct.
Mr. Tracy said that would not have any impact. Okay.
The only impact would be if you wanted to bring other industries in. Of course, you're using up the cheap power for them.
Right.
But the regular customers right now are not impacted when we have to buy the supplemental power during the winter months because of the heat loads and so forth. They are protected.
One important charge that people are seeing on their bills over the last 12 or more months is the ZECs and RECs surcharges imposed by the state on all electricity users.
Yes, sir.
And
that started in 2017 and it's been going up.
Right.
And in fact, this January, we had been getting charged about $1,800 a month for Rex. That bill we got in January was almost $14,000, so it's increased. And the ZECs have gone up accordingly as well. And we paid, I think, $230,000 in January for those.
And Bill, that is to finance power operations around the state that aren't profitable. But
well, the ZECs are zero emission credits, and what there's 4 nuclear power plants in western New York. Governor Cuomo wants them to stay online until 2030 to help reduce greenhouse gases by 40% in the state. The owner of those plants is losing money because natural gas is so cheap and nuclear power is so expensive. So the state worked a deal with the owner that they would compensate him so he doesn't lose money. That's what the zero emission credits are, and it's applied to all electric bills in the state of New York.
So all ratepayers have to contribute.
And all ratepayers are paying it.
Okay.
They may not know they're paying it because it's buried in supplemental charges. It's not broken out.
And that may explain why your utility bills seem to be going up. It's not the crypto miners, it's something else.
How long will that be going on?
Indefinitely.
Indefinitely.
And still, we're relatively cheaper than other areas because everywhere else is going up too. So everybody's going up. And our differential's still favorable, but still hurts our pocketbook, and it might get a little bit worse because there's going to be a state program to encourage offshore wind generation too, which will benefit those communities right near the shore. But we'll all be paying for it, even if, as you know, all of our power comes from historical deals from many decades ago for hydroelectric on the Niagara River. So this is just one of the cost-sharing efforts that hurts us, and it hurts us percentage-wise more because our rates are so low. So if each of us pays a couple of dollars more, if our rates are only a couple of dollars, that's like a 100% increase. But if your rates are already $8, it's only like a 25% increase. So we notice it more because our rates are so low. But we're all sharing in those extra charges across the state, which is painful.
I guess one of my concerns too is just how much this cripples our ability to attract industry that employs people.
Exactly. That's a fair question and a good question, but I think the answer is that in the value of cryptocurrency such as Bitcoin, that it's reduced in value by 2/3 in the past several months, and there is really no incentive for anyone to build large bit mining or Bitcoin operations
right now
at this point in time.
Right now, but as we all know, it's like the stock market, it can
But they
change.
could go up.
Plus,
They could go up.
as
That's a market fluctuation, and I worry about,
Look at the price of gold.
you know, the change in the climate that could cause an increase in the number of mining industries we have, and how that would then suck up all of our power.
Now remember,
and as these crypto miners find more attractive places to do business, that's what they're going to do. They're already fleeing Plattsburgh for other municipalities that are more willing and that maybe haven't instituted Rider A the way we have. So between the reduced cost of Bitcoin and the fact that we've instituted Rider A, I think we'll continue to see an outflux of cryptocurrency miners going forward. So I don't really believe that our supply of municipal power is ever going to be in danger from Bitcoin mining. It may be in danger from something else, but not from Bitcoin mining. That ship has almost sailed.
Let me just clarify that these processors can also be used for just not only Bitcoin, but what's the other function I'm thinking of, and I can't.
Blockchain.
Blockchain technology.
Well,
not typically. The ones that are using the most power are application specific. They can't easily be converted. They can't be converted to another cryptocurrency. But remember, the biggest protection you all did, and it's novel, you're the only municipality that has developed a set of codes to do this, is requiring, what, 70% of the heat generated from these entities to be recycled, reused, if the temperature is below, what, 50 degrees Fahrenheit. I think that is the reason why people, cryptocurrency operators aren't going to want to come, because they have to meet that hurdle here, which actually Ryan is developing techniques to do that, but they don't have to meet that hurdle anywhere else in the entire world. So we believe we're going to see these entities that don't care much about our power, don't care much about power recycling, to be going elsewhere. I'd be very surprised if we have
Bill, have we
applications.
gone over our quota limit during any other times other than cold month periods?
In the past, we have during the spring and summer, and that only occurs if the flow of the Niagara River is down. But considering how much snow they're getting up in the Midwest these days, I don't think that's going to be a problem, at least in the near future.
And Rochelle, to answer your concern about blockchain, the users of blockchain in the future are not going to farm out their data to entities like the Bitcoin miners. A bank, for example, will have their own blockchain technology in-house, and they will maintain it themselves. The same with, say, a hospital that might need to protect very, very sensitive information. They will do the same. They will not farm that out to third parties the way the Bitcoin industry is done. So I think we're safe there too. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Well, I will say this too, and you can look at your electric bill, right? And you'll see it broken down. The residential rate's about 4.5 cents per kilowatt hour, which is your typical rate. And then what Bill was talking about is the PPAC, which is the added amount. Usually in the summer you see it at about 0.6 cents per kilowatt hour. Bill was just saying it was about 0.7 cents with so it's barely gone up 0.1 cent with Rider A attached, but with the cryptocurrency and people doing those high density loads, with Rider A attaches to them, you said it's going up 4 cents, their PPAC.
So it's a little bit under 4 cents, but rounding it up, yeah, 4 cents is going to be about it.
So if a cryptocurrency miner is in the commercial zone, which is also 4.5 cents per kilowatt hour, their electricity rate is almost doubling. If they're in the industrial zone and getting industrial rates, then I believe their rate's about 2.6 cents per kilowatt hour. So then it's almost tripling there. So it's increasing quite a bit for them. And then you can even see the what Bill was talking about. What's it called? The Z?
The Z-Rex and the Zex and the Rex.
The Zex and the Rex, you can see that too. So you can really, you can kind of keep track of what's pushing your energy costs up. But I have a middle of the road proposal. Perhaps if we table it for one more week, Jeff can get his proposal out there so at least the public can see the noise ordinance written down. And also in the next week, if anyone wants to send me email or call me with any questions you might have regarding energy usage, and I'll try to meet with the mayor and Bill and get all those get those questions and answers written down, and I can present those at the next council meeting, and then perhaps we can move forward with it then. Is that a good middle of the road solution?
I can agree with that.
I second that.
Sure.
I'd be prepared for next week.
All right, so with that in mind, I'll motion to table this for this week.
Second.
Second by Councilor Renzel. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Passed.
Resolution authorizing settlement of property assessment case filed by Charles Doucette. Whereas Charles Doucette petitioner.
I'd like to make a motion to waive the reading and move the resolution.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Discussion on the item itself?
Just that we had our assessor look at these figures, and I believe he determined that these were fair. Is that a correct statement? Okay. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Roll call?
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs?
Yes.
Counselor Ensel?
Yes.
Counselor McFarland?
No.
Counselor Moore?
Yes.
Whereas section 253.3 of the city code authorizes the city planner to regulate traffic and parking in the city of Plattsburgh, including the powers granted by VTL 1640.
I would like to make a motion to waive the reading.
Moved by Councilor Gibbs,
Resolution.
second by Councilor Moore. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Discussion on the item itself.
So I will say this was brought up in the PPAC meeting on Tuesday. It did pass, the PP, I believe it was a vote of 8-2, is that correct?
Do you remember off the top of my head? Something like that.
It was 8-2. I believe the only no votes were Mr. Rotella and myself. The reason I voted no is because there does seem to be a lot of confusion, and it seems like a lot of people are thinking that this is our plan for parking. This is how we plan on solving all the parking problems. This is, and I'm sure we'll get people online. I'm sure we might get people calling in saying like, if this is the city's plan, it's not going to be enough. But what this is proposed to do is, until we can make the changes, until we can adopt a plan, the PPAC can adopt the plan with all its minor quirks, which will take a little while if we're going to go to a paid parking system. That this is just one little avenue for probably a small amount of people, because $3 a day is pretty expensive. If you're doing that every day, it's about $90 a month, which is a pretty expensive parking permit. That includes weekends, so it wouldn't be that high typically, but this is something we don't see people taking a lot of advantage of. It's for those people that are going to specifically know on a certain day that they're going to have to be parked on the street for more than 2 hours. Because we've been enforcing our parking and it's become a little more efficient. I'm sure a lot of you have seen that parking has become more abundant, at least on the street. And I'm sure you'll see that the parking lots, the Durkee Street parking lot, if you go to the county's parking lots, you'll notice that they're a lot more full. And that there's probably a lot more free spaces on the street in light of the fact that we're enforcing the 2 hour, 1 hour, 30-minute, whatever they are, parking limits. So this is just kind of a rather costly day permit for anyone who knows they have to be parked on the street for more than 2 hours and wants to absolve themselves of that need to move their car every 2 hours. So it's temporary, it's very rough, but it should, as Director Miller pointed out, the one good thing that will definitely come of it is we'll certainly get some feedback and we'll get some data from it. We may not, if it is passed, we'll get an idea of how many people really don't like the current system and are going for $3 parking permits. I don't imagine it's going to be a lot. This isn't really changing, as the mayor pointed out earlier, this isn't really changing the current system that we have right now. But there are going to be a lot of changes to come, hopefully, in the future, especially as the Durkee Street lot gets developed and parking starts becoming more of an issue then. I don't think we should amend it, as Councilor Ensel was pointing out, just because the PPAC is going to be meeting at least once a month, or is going to be meeting every month on the second Tuesday of every month. And they're going to be discussing this and reviewing the data and possibly making recommendations to scrap this, to lower the cost of it, to increase the cost of it. Because one thing that would happen if everyone is buying these permits and completely replacing our current parking regime, then we don't want to go forward with it more. So it's kind of a fluid system here for gathering data. And the other thing, the real reason I don't want it amended to have a sort of
Time limit, restriction.
Yeah, a time limit is just because it doesn't seem to manufacture another point where we would talk about it. If there wasn't any reason to do it, it doesn't seem like a very appropriate use of the council's time, and it might lead to more confusion down the line, because a lot of people seem to might think that this is what our end goal is.
Do we have an implementation date for this?
It's ready to go immediately. Here's what the permits would look like. We'll be selling them through the finance office downstairs. They're very simple. Requires somebody, if they'd like to not run the risk of getting a ticket by parking more than the 2 hours. They could buy a $3 permit, they put it on their dash, they write the date in and their license plate in, and they avoid the risk of getting nabbed, which I think my car unfortunately was out there for more than 2 hours. I just realized, and I probably got a nice yellow ticket on there right now. I wish I had bought one of those $3 permits. But
So, I mean, I guess, would we need to, if we agree to this resolution, when you say that it's effective immediately, would it be better to actually come up with a resolution with an implementation date to amend it so that if we pass it, and how is it going to start on Monday, take effect on Monday? Technically, it could take effect tomorrow.
it could, yeah, it's
So
ready to
should we,
go, yeah.
right, so I guess from a standpoint for fairness to those people that are parking, should we maybe set a date of implementation on it so that they know beginning that date that,
Well, I think you want this, to make this available as soon as tomorrow morning, because remember, this doesn't take anything away from anybody. If you want to park for 2 hours, you park for 2 hours. If you want to run the risk of getting a ticket, you can park for more than 2 hours. But if you want to not run the risk of getting a ticket, now there's an outlet for $3 to avoid that problem.
Yeah, I
So this
think
takes
that's-
nothing from anybody. It only offers more options to people, so why wouldn't we want to do that immediately?
I agree.
Mr. Marks, is your office ready to receive these $3 payments?
Not exactly, but we can be within half a day. All I need to do is make sure we figure out a way to do the date stamping and where we're gonna handle the cash and where we're gonna charge the revenue.
So if someone wants to come in tomorrow and buy one, you'd be ready?
Sure, we could do it, yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
And if they wanted to buy 100, we could do that too.
Okay.
Since we better print up more.
Yeah, just the volume of stock. And like I said, a weighted date stamp.
Any further questions? I know this seems like a big step based on the reporting of this, but it really is only a small baby step that gives people options. Certainly doesn't penalize anybody in any way whatsoever.
It's like the logical way this is proceeding. You know, we stepped up enforcement as sort of a step one. We're offering people another option now to purchase these permits. It gives us some really valuable data for when we start some sort of permanent paid parking system. And then, you know, a third step eventually is to add that paid parking system. So it all proceeds very logically, and I hand it to the Community Development Office for coming up with this scheme and making it work.
well, careful labeling it scheme, Mike.
I said that kind of tongue in cheek to see if we could get a rise out of somebody, but they're doing a wonderful job and it's much appreciated.
And when we
Thank
start
you.
enforcing parking, within the first day of enforcing parking, there are people calling his office up saying, please sell us a permit.
Yeah.
The public was actually requesting this.
Yeah, I don't want to name any one particular group, but there are some constituencies in this city that are looking forward to this opportunity, I think.
Well, I guess since it's temporary and we do need the data, so I guess I would like to see how it turns out.
I think it's important that the point you made, Mayor, is absolutely positively emphasized in that this doesn't change anything. It's, would you rather pay $15 for a parking ticket or $3 for a pass?
Mm-hmm.
Because essentially that's what it comes down to.
That's right. Do you want to play parking roulette or not? Yeah, that's right. Any other further discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs?
Yes.
Counselor Ensel?
Yes.
Counselor McFarland?
Yes.
Counselor Moore?
Yes,
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore the common council approves that the mayor is authorized to sign a non-binding letter of intent with Prime Companies LLC to purchase and develop a portion of the property commonly known as the Durkee Street parking lot.
Moved by Councilor Ansel, second by Councilor Gibbs. Discussion, and I know you discussed this also during the previous work session. Roll call?
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs?
Yes.
Counselor Ansel?
Yes.
Counselor McFarland?
Yes.
Counselor Moore?
Yes.
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore the common council approves that the mayor is authorized to sign approving and concurring in the attached amendment to the New York Municipal Power Agency agreement pursuant to Article 11 of the subject agreement.
Moved by Councilor McFarland, second by Councilor Kelly. Discussion? Roll call?
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs?
Yes.
Counselor Ansel?
Yes.
Counselor McFarland?
Yes.
Counselor Moore?
Yes.
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore the common council approves the Office of Community Development to loan Ho Sun Woo, the owner of 10 to 18 Brinkerhoff Street, $43,800 from the Facade Loan Fund Program to help improve both the look and stability of the building's exterior facade.
Moved by Councilor McFarland, second by Councilor Kelly. Discussion?
Do we have the terms of what the repayment?
Yeah, the facade loan, I believe it's, one second. The interest rate is 3% based on a repayment period of, 84 consecutive monthly payments, so 7 years.
And how often is the interest capitalized? Do you know?
It's amortized on a monthly basis, I believe.
And how long is this? I didn't know we had a facade loan fund program. Have people been taking advantage of this before?
Yes, before. It's been a while since one was issued. The city has 3 loan funds available to the public. One is a housing loan fund, one is an economic development revolving loan fund, and the third one is the facade loan fund, which is specifically for improvements to the exteriors of buildings.
Do you know when the last time the city granted one was?
Rich?
A couple of years, it's been a couple of years.
It's been a while.
Has Westocom applied for one anytime soon?
Probably should.
That sounds familiar, but I couldn't tell you when.
Okay.
Any further questions? Roll call?
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs?
Yes.
Counselor Ansel?
Yes.
Counselor McFarland?
Yes.
Counselor Moore?
Yes.
No travel requested this time. Are there any resolutions for initial consideration? Any new business or additional council reports? Any closing public comments on any topic of mutual interest?
I just want to say it pleased me to know that you guys are looking out for our benefits.
Well, thank you, and
Now I
it's,
know, I appreciate it.
and it's all very, very complicated stuff too, a lot of moving parts with all that. Thank you.
Well, you hear rumors
Right, sure.
pretty soon.
And we get the calls.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Moved by Councilor Gibbs, second by Councilor Moore. Roll call.
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs?
Yes.
Counselor Ansel?
Yes.
Counselor McFarland?
Yes.
Counselor Moore?
Yes.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dad.
Thank you, Rochelle.
Thank you, Rochelle. Bye.
Yeah.
Purchase price adjustment charge.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
That's our parking advisory committee. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. All right. I'll give her
I don't think that have yes, in case you have other